How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Myself and Nick Rice bringing you a whole bunch of sports today. The NBA is back. We got some NFL and college football news, and the World Series is officially set. So we're going to hit all the bullet points today. We will start with the NBA. Nick, how's it going? And are you happy that basketball is back?
Yeah, very excited. I'm sorry I did not brush up on my lacrosse updates. I did not look too far into the cricket competition right now, but I think as long as you don't touch those bases, I got everything else covered.
I had a whole segment planned. I guess we'll bump it till next week, though. We'll touch on cricket another time. But for most teams in the NBA, it looks like all of them just about have played about 3 games into this season so far. Another thing I don't think I told you, I'm trying fantasy basketball for the first time. I have no idea how it works. People don't enjoy listening to other people talk about their fantasy team, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying I've never done fantasy basketball at all, and I look at my roster and it looks like a good group of players, but I don't know how it's going to translate to fantasy. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, well, you're already in like 3 fantasy football leagues, so apparently that's not enough for you or something. I mean, that's a lot of time to put into it.
See, people always say it's a lot of time for fantasy. I set my lineup on like Thursday, before the Thursday game. And then if there's like an injury in my lineup where, so-and-so isn't going to play, I make that change like Sunday morning. And maybe that's why I haven't won a league in a while. I've won plenty of leagues though. I think I got like 4 championships or something, but maybe this is why I haven't won in a long time. But I just take those Thursday morning and like Sunday morning and I do some tweaks and that's it. I probably spend 30 minutes a week on my fantasy football team. So I don't know. It's not that big a deal, but 3 gets confusing because you forget which team has which player and what you need. That's the part that having 3 can be confusing for.
Well, that's the sort of lackadaisical nature that's going to get you beat this Sunday because I'm playing you this week in fantasy football. So, just saying. I mean, you do have Derrick Henry, so it might be a little hard, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And okay, we could talk. That could have turned us into the football conversation, but I do want to talk NBA first. But I have some stuff to talk about Derrick Henry because I made some comments last week about the Titans that was clearly proven wrong, which we'll get to that in a minute. So a lot of eyeballs are, of course, on the new look Lakers, as LeBron tends to do every offseason, play general manager, get all his buddies over. He's like the Adam Sandler of the NBA, where he just has to get all his buddies to work on whatever he's working on, which is funny because, Adam Sandler is a huge basketball fan. Russell Westbrook being there, they're still trying to figure out how he works with that system. I'm enjoying seeing Carmelo Anthony play meaningful minutes. I think he had like 26 last night in the game that the Lakers played. And then you got Brooklyn, which is another situation where Kyrie is not playing. I'm not going to touch the reason why because I don't have the patience for that sort of conversation. But these are both teams that it looks like they are. I know the Lakers. Yeah, both teams are 1-2 to start in 3 games. Granted, it's only 3 games. There's 80 or 79 more to go, whatever the case may be. So you can't freak out yet, but clearly not the start you're expecting. But with the Lakers specifically, I feel like the first 25 games to them is basically going to be a preseason type atmosphere where they're just trying to get everything, humming together.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm seeing all over ESPN. Like Charlotte is 3-0 for the first time in franchise history. Memphis looks amazing. It's like, oh my goodness. Like every year we fall for it. The first couple of weeks, the standings look totally obnoxious. So what I will say is watching the Lakers at some point in every game this year, we are slower than I thought defensively. We are having a tougher time covering a single man, and that was against Phoenix, a huge issue where they just completely ran us off the floor. But overall, the Lakers have a defense that I knew wouldn't be great, but when you have to switch everything, when you have constant inside the paint, even with Anthony Davis and LeBron, you have constant, big guys just bullying us down there. I am a little more concerned than I was before the season about the Lakers. We all know Westbrook was going to be rough to start the year, but this is really, to me, going to be a longer transition than I thought it would be before the season started.
Well, I had the theory before, well before the season started, just when they made the trade for Westbrook, that LeBron, basically invented the load management situation. And I kind of saw a situation where he lets Russ do what he wants to do in the regular season so that LeBron can kind of take it easy and then kind of take the reins back in the playoffs. And that could eventually be how this works out, where it's like, man, we need, AD's always hurt. LeBron's getting older. If Westbrook has the energy to do this, go for it, I guess. That doesn't seem to be how they're starting. That's not going to be plan A. Might be plan B or C. It might be where they settle. But like you said, there's a lot of, defensive liabilities on that team to coincide with the offensive production that someone like Russell Westbrook brings, and Anthony Davis, worrying about being injured, and LeBron getting older. I didn't catch the whole game on this, but wasn't there some shoving match between Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis? Can you shed any light on that?
Well, I'm pretty sure that if we were to figure out before the year that there would be a Laker involved in a scruffle, all right, Dwight Howard would be basically towards the top of that list.
Of course.
This is just a bunch of egos together for the Lakers. The GM, as you bring him up, he brought in a bunch of guys that are, especially with Westbrook and Howard and some of these other guys that are towards the top of the league in technicals every year. Very, very feisty, very emotional. And I think that was the case today. And I got to tell you, I think it's going to be the case at some point later this year. However, with Anthony Davis involved in any sort of a scuffle is amazing to me, because for the last 2 years, I mean, every single game, we're asking him to be more passionate, to go down there and to take some pride in the way that you play. And I hope that this could start to, turn things around. At least I hope so.
That's a great point. I didn't think of that, but for the past 2 years, like you said, he's been in the doghouse of not being physical enough, not showing enough passion. I'm sure this is halfway a good thing for the Lakers, but maybe kind of center that towards the other team's center and not your backup center. Maybe just redirect that passion and toughness a little bit. But I assume they've kind of ironed out whatever the issue was there. I was rather surprised when Dwight went back to LA. He was starting to blend fairly well in Philly when he left the Lake. Last year he became a pretty productive, second unit guy for Philly. So for him to go right back to LA was a little shocking to me, but I guess when LeBron calls, you go. And, but I'm curious if this, continues, if he's going to be there. Did this seem like a huge issue or something that you think they're already past?
I think they're already past. I just think the issue is what I brought up with the defense and the athleticism, just how old we are. And then you brought up also with Brooklyn. I think we should touch on that too, because they are one of the favorites in the East. The Nets have, of course, KD going wild to start the season. But what is a little bit concerning is that Durant has played so well to start the year, and they're 1-2, and they haven't exactly played like the Lakers, the Phoenix Suns, who should be right in the thick of things in the West, along with in the season opener, just 3 very good teams back to back to back. I think the Nets also should be just a touch concerned. We're very early in the year, but this is an opportunity between now and Christmas to look at play styles and look at the way you look, not exactly the record, and start to make some evaluation.
A lot of people will say that, that there was even talk after the COVID year, when the NBA basically started on Christmas, that a lot of people, in a normal year, Christmas is really where the season starts. That first 20 to 25 game stretch beforehand is just figuring out your lineups and stuff, and Christmas being the true opening day. So that's usually, like you said, the time period that, you got to get it straightened out by then. If you're still having these day one issues by Christmas time, whether you play on the day or not, that's just usually a universal, checkpoint for the season. That's when you have the questions. And Brooklyn, the big question is, will Kyrie Irving play this year? We really have no information to say yes or no on that, but that's definitely going to be the question for them. Another team worth talking about, though, is Milwaukee. They are 2-1. Again, the 3 games is a small sample size, but they, returned pretty much everyone of note for their championship team. What do you like their chances of repeating, or at least in the East, just to get back to the finals? Do you see any other team that who would be the biggest threat to Milwaukee in the East, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
I think that opening game, Milwaukee and Brooklyn, the front end of the doubleheader to begin the year, I think that was, based on the way everything looked, that felt a lot like a preview of a conference final game or a conference semifinal. Like the Brooklyn Nets had their hands full against everybody. They looked just like last year. Giannis was rolling, and Giannis hitting threes. If he keeps doing that, this league is toast.
Right.
He is just improving every year, like a Lamar Jackson, who I'm sure we'll get to at some point.
Mhm.
He just every year gets 10, 15% better. He cares so much about his craft. A lot of guys in the NBA care about their craft, but not like Giannis. Giannis is just dedicated to a T, and you can see it with how big he's gotten over the years, how he now has a legit NBA body. And I think that that's going to pay huge dividends this year. They won the title last season, but they do not look complacent going into this year.
Giannis also a big Chick-fil-A guy, and that can only help your success,
What?
I think. I mean, I'm sure you saw that when he was in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru the day after the championship or whatever.
Yep, I remember that.
But when you look past Brooklyn, not to look past them, but like who else could be in that conversation? I think the Hawks are going to also be good, but I don't see them duplicating this quite the success of last year. I think they'll take a small step back. And then with Philly, I don't know how the Sixers are going to really depends on where all this Ben Simmons issues land. Like, do they eventually trade him and get a piece that benefits them, or are they basically playing without a starting caliber point guard for the whole season because they can't move Ben Simmons? You know, does something crazy happen? Do they get a Damian Lillard? Do they get someone even someone if there's been talks of like trading him to Orlando, but I don't really see how that would have worked. I think it's just, hearsay or whatever, or like a John Wall from Washington, just a playmaking point guard. But and I think Philly is kind of on hold to be, they're 2-1. They lost the game to Brooklyn in a game that it was just abundantly clear that you needed, better play from the point guard position to beat these better teams. And of course, before we not, pass over the Brooklyn stuff, if was it Kevin Durant wears a size smaller shoe, they might have won the championship last year. So, they were that close. But I think Philly, Atlanta, and then like some people like Miami a little bit. The Knicks are trying to duplicate the success they have. But overall, I think it's, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and then everybody else. I don't even know who the third team would be this far anyway. We might find out. I mean, the Bulls are the number 1 seed right now for what it's worth.
That's right. Watch out. Caruso, Lonzo, all those guys.
Yep.
But what was really just amazing to me, we see it in the NFL with Deshaun Watson, how the Texans are asking for literally your entire mortgage in order to move Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Same thing with Ben Simmons. It's like, do you realize who Ben Simmons is? Like, that's why I have respect for the Pelicans, who made the move that they did instead of holding on to Anthony Davis for the last year. Do you realize that Ben Simmons is literally a sinking trade asset? He is depreciating in value every single game. And to me, I think the Sixers don't believe that. They think that he's worth, 20 first-round picks for some reason, and he's just not that guy. And I think that clearly he's worn out his welcome, and it's time for him to move. And for Philly, it's time for them to pull the trigger and trade him. And just get rid of him. It's time for, that ship has sailed. It's time to move on.
See, I'm sure if they could trade him right now, they would. The issue is he hasn't been on the floor since they finally convinced him to come to training camp. He shows up in sweatpants, doesn't even take his phone out of his pocket for practice, which I've never seen anything even remotely close to that. And now he's pulling and I'm not, qualified to talk about someone's mental health, but he's pulling I'm just not mentally prepared to be on the floor yet. And like, you don't want to discredit someone's mental health, but also like, if that was how you felt, you could have mentioned that in the offseason. They could have got you the help you needed. So like, I'm just curious if the only way they can trade him is if they can get him on the floor to resemble some form of when he was playing well, so that a team could at least, because the other teams aren't dumb either. If they're going to get him, it's they're not doing it to do the Sixers a favor. They're doing because they think he can help their basketball team. So there's no proof that he can do that. I don't see how a trade gets made.
Yeah, I just believe that, they knew that Ben Simmons was disgruntled before the year. And, maybe you and me are closer together than I think, but I think they really should have done a little more homework before the season started to figure out if this guy was going to be ready. And now it's just a big old thing. And then now, like I mentioned, he's constantly losing trade value. If Ben Simmons was there, like you brought up, I put them with Milwaukee and Brooklyn. They're that good. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And Embiid's just not good enough. And he's also not healthy enough for a season for them to be in position. Maybe the Sixers have Ben Simmons. They just decide to keep him this year, but I don't believe that Embiid plays any more than 2/3 of the games. So if they're a 4 or 5 or 6 seed, do I really think that they can win on the road throughout the playoffs? I don't think so. So I think it's Milwaukee and Brooklyn. That's the two right now. And maybe a third contender comes in later, but that's why you have to stick around to this podcast and figure out who that team is.
It's a marathon, not a sprint for sure. And you mentioned, Embiid, if he can stay healthy, that's a whole nother conversation. But if he can only play 2/3 of the game, like you're saying, like how far can Seth Curry, not Steph Curry, but Seth Curry and Tobias Harris, who have had great. I think Seth Curry is the second best player on the Sixers right now. I just even
Probably
from the way he closed out the year, in the playoffs, and then in this 3-game stretch, he is easily their second best player. Tobias Harris, when he is that third or fourth, he's a very big asset. When you ask him to be 1 or 2, I think is where you run into problems. Just speaking from experience when he played for Orlando, and then even see, and I think he's a good player. I think he's a great. He could be a important piece on a championship roster, whether it be in Philly or somewhere else. But I think the point guard play, they just obviously need. I think they just need Ben Simmons to get back on the floor at some point. Maybe it's a week from now, maybe it's 2 weeks from now, and play like a solid month. That way a team can say, I like what this guy does. We'll trade this big contract if this could be like, again, no one's going to trade for him just to help out the Sixers. It has got to be someone that is going to benefit the team that's getting him. And if they can see him play 12, 15 games and decide that, okay, this guy's somewhat back to the all pro, all-star level that he was flirting with before all this took place. So I think if they can do that, they can move him, and they're that one piece away. Whether Ben Simmons, shakes off the cobwebs and goes back to playing well, or they trade him for a piece, but they're that one piece away, I think, right now. Like you said, they're if they can get that piece, they're right up there with Brooklyn and Milwaukee.
Yeah, and honestly, if Brooklyn is able to get that one piece back that you alluded to, I think all this conversation is null and void. I don't believe Kyrie's going to come back this year, but if he does, then all this conversation is out the window, because I just think the Nets would have too much firepower at this point for Brooklyn Milwaukee or anybody else to compete with.
Kudos to Brooklyn though, because they've been a circus for the most part, mostly because of Kyrie, a little bit because of how they got James Harden, and then the whole, you sign Kevin Durant when he's not going to play for a year and a half, all that. They shut the Kyrie stuff down, because there was talk of maybe he'll only play on the road because in New York you need to be vaccinated to be in the arena and all that. Maybe he'll only play on the road, or maybe trade him to a place that he can for somebody. And they're like, no, he's on our team. He's deactivated. When he's ready to play for, whether they change the reasonings or the restrictions, or he gets vaccinated, whatever happens first, then he'll come back. But otherwise, we're just going to set him home. We're not going to. There was even talks of move to a practice facility in New Jersey so we can practice with the team, because their restrictions are different than I don't know where the Brooklyn Nets practice currently. It might be on Long Island. It might be somewhere else. I don't know where their practice facility is, but apparently if they would have done it in New Jersey, he could practice. And they're like, we're not uprooting everything for Kyrie. Like, he's the third most important person in this system, I think. So they're not going to uproot everything. So kudos to them for kind of putting the brakes on, the circus a little bit, because they've been in the headlines for non-basketball reasons a lot in the past 2 years. So at least they escaped this one.
Yeah, I haven't heard of Kyrie in like 2 weeks. I think we should check in on this guy. And because, for a guy that says, I don't like attention, I don't like anyone talking about me, I think he actually kind of likes it. So I would be interested and checking in on this guy, see if he's okay.
Yeah. Last team I want to talk about now, currently, again, only 3 games in, at the top of the West is a familiar face, the Golden State Warriors, after 2 seasons of, injury-riddled stuff, with Klay Thompson and everything else. They seem to be, this new look Warriors seem to be, coming together. And do you think they're going to be a player in how the Western Conference Finals shakes out?
Yes, absolutely. They, with Klay Thompson back, because of his versatility, I believe it's about a month and a half to 2 months away from him coming back. I believe the Warriors will absolutely be a threat. And Steph Curry, man, not Seth. Steph Curry, that guy is the truth. Still a top 5 player in the NBA. I don't care how good Harden looks, and Giannis and LeBron and Kevin Durant. I think Steph is that 5th guy, and there's a lot of other great players in the league right now, like a Luka Doncic, just off the top of my head, and Anthony Davis. I would put Steph at 5. He's that good all the way around.
Absolutely. And again, that's not to discredit the other brother. I think both Currys have been, really,
Yes.
really good, honestly. And I don't know that we ever expected Seth to get to the level of Steph. And maybe he's not on the same level, but he definitely has carved out a nice little career for himself. I don't know if this is still the case, but at some point last year, his 3-pointer percentage was actually higher than his brother's, which was
Really?
crazy for the career. I don't know if that's still the case, but that just shows you, again, I think he's easily the second best player on Brooklyn. And on Philadelphia. And if with Golden State, they're 3-0 already, they're finding ways to win games. And obviously getting somebody back like Klay Thompson can only benefit you. So,
Yeah.
a lot of fans had the Warriors fatigue where they, lost a lot of games and everything, or they won a lot of titles and everything. And everybody was kind of over the Warriors super team and all that. And how can we miss you if you won't go away? They've kind of gone into the shadows for the past 2 years. And I think people are accepting of them being good again. So it's not going to be, it's not Cleveland and Golden State in the finals for 8 years in a row like we thought it was going to be. So like I think they're getting back to it at the right time, and I'm happy. I was never really a Golden State hater like a lot of people were. I think they built the team the way you build a basketball team, even with the addition of Durant. The fact that you could have a roster that good and still have the money to sign Durant, I'm going to praise you over, talking shit about it personally. So I'm happy to see them back because we always knew it was just injuries. This was not a bad basketball team the past 2 years if they were at full strength. And now they will be, like you said, in about a month or so.
And shout out to Steve Kerr. Like I actually was a little confused exactly how much of the 73 win team and the 2 title winning team was about KD and Steph and all those guys, and how much of it was Steve Kerr. And I think that question has been answered now the last couple of years. For them to be LeBron one-eyed 3 falling away from winning that playing game, from being that close, having that big of a disparity in talent last year is just amazing. And this year too, half of these guys we all know would be role players at best on 80% of the NBA. So for them to gel like they have this year, Draymond shell of himself too, is just incredible to watch. And I think Steve Kerr has really established himself now, unlike before. Now it's crystal clear he is a top tier head coach.
And who thought like Anthony Wiggins could step in and be like a 30-minute a night, like scoring in the high teens that he's done, late last year into this year. Very efficient. And I don't think anybody expected that from him. And like you said, when someone like Klay Thompson comes back, it's only going to be easier for some of these role players. And even Draymond Green will probably have a little bit of a resurgence. You said he is a shell of himself, but I guess the bottom line here is Klay Thompson can only help this team that's already starting to come together.
Yeah. Golden State is just in a brutal conference, but clearly they're up to the task in that division, beating the Lakers and the Clippers to begin the year.
Yeah, Clippers 0-2, and again, it's not, you don't really know what to make of a team until like we were saying earlier around Christmas time. But like, do you see them getting it together? Are they still a factor in all this?
Somewhat. I believe that their trip to the Western Finals was as much about just amazing players having career years, like Terrence Mann. I like Terrence Mann. They signed him to a 2-year contract extension. He caught fire in game, I believe, 6 against Utah, if I'm not mistaken, in the Western semis, where he just hit like 9 or 10 threes. It was crazy. But yes, I don't believe that they're going to be able to duplicate that. And I think Paul George is more the guy most of the year we've seen versus last year in the playoffs, where he really was incredible. I think the Clippers are fine, but without Kawhi, too much to ask. They're not going to be a player, in my opinion.
Last team, unless there's one you want to throw in here, where does that leave the Phoenix Suns? Where do we see them obviously making it to the finals, the career renaissance of Chris Paul and all that?
Yeah.
Do you see them being any sort of factor in this season?
Absolutely. I think they're right there at the very end. I think the Lakers will be in the conversation. I have amended my prediction to who wins the West. I don't think it's going to be the Lakers right now. Of course, we're way too early in the year. I wouldn't be shocked if it's the Suns yet again. That's just how good they are this season.
So who's your, the way too early prediction 3 games in? Who's your prediction to win the title though?
Believe it or not, the title.
Yeah.
I just think Brooklyn's too good. I think it's Brooklyn over Phoenix, to be honest. But I think for both of us, I don't know if you're going to make a prediction, but I think we're allowed to amend our prediction at some point.
Yeah, this early on for sure. I wanted to get something on the record here. I'm going to go as far as to say Golden State figures everything out, because it's not just if Klay Thompson comes back and he's 90% of what he used to be, I think it's game on. And I think it's a style that, a team like, the Lakers weren't used to going against, especially with the older roster that they have and everything. And as we know, I'm the Knicks to Lakers fan, and I am the opposite of a Lakers fan, but it is so cool to see Carmelo finally play with, his buddies.
He had
like
six
that,
threes last night.
Yeah, like 26
where was
last
this?
Night.
Yeah.
And that's just, Russell Westbrook being there because he is a California guy. That's cool. But just to see Carmelo, it's even in Portland. I think we're going to look back on his career and that time that he spent with the Blazers the past, I want to say 2 seasons. It might have been 3 because some of it is under the radar. You might see a little more of it being on the West Coast because their games start at like 11 p.m. over here. But I'd always, check the box score. Oh, Melo had 22. Melo had 19. Melo had 30 one night. Like, I don't know, just being able to go play out in Portland where like there was no real expectation of him and he just got to do his thing and he kind of got his confidence back. I mean, there was a time that he was in the J.R. Smith category that, like no one would really touch him. And now he's with the Lakers. And regardless of if he starts or not, I think it's just great to see him. This is a Hall of Fame quality player through his offensive production alone. And, known as one of the greatest Olympic players of all time, not having as much success in the NBA postseason. But, between all his gold medals and all his points and everything, he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. And it's definitely good to see him on a team that actually has something to play for after, several years with bad Knicks teams and then just kind of shunned out to Portland for a while.
Yeah. So, by the way, so sorry for the noise. I think J.R. Smith just launched a golf ball into our glass window. We'll have to figure that out before the break. But
it's pouring here too. I hope it doesn't seem to be coming through too much. So hopefully when people listen to this, it doesn't feel like a monsoon. So
that's right. But just to wrap up that point, yes, this is just an incredible resurgence for a guy like Carmelo, and it seems to happen to certain guys who are in the limelight for such a long time. And I think, honestly, just to touch back to the Warrior point, I think that did wonders for Steph, who was in the lineup, in the limelight for so many years. And to finally, for a season like last year, go into it thinking if we make the playoffs, that would exceed expectations. And honestly, people aren't looking at us anyways, whether we're good or we're not right now. So let's just relax. And I think, it's really, really, beneficial for a couple of guys who get scrutinized all the time to have a year off from that. And I think Carmelo was one of the benefactors of that sort of situation.
That kind of reminds me, just to switch sport, like nobody wants to be 3-3, but that's almost how I started feeling about this UCF season, where it's like, we have all the injuries. We know why we're 3-3. Let's just get it done. Let's just get bowl eligible. Let's, go to a bowl game and let's win it. And it's nice to, and part of that is Cincinnati is taking that Power 5, party crasher eye and running with it for this year, at least. And it is a little refreshing to, not every game is like your entire season in the balance, and you can truly just try to win one game at a time. Right. And you're right. I think that a little bit, not that Steph Curry's ever not in the limelight, but to where it's not every single game you play affects, you're going for some kind of record or trying to, because I don't think people realize how much beating that regular season win record took out of that team. I mean, what if that didn't matter to them? And what if they did play these guys a little less, and maybe these guys don't get hurt when they get hurt? Obviously Steph, not a major injury, but for the other guys on that team. And that took a lot out of them, I think, to go for that. Was 72 wins because the Bulls had 73 or one of those, or other way around.
They had 72. And then they went 72.
So to go for that, I don't know that they truly understood, because at the time it's like you couldn't tell them otherwise. Like, we're beating everybody anyway, we might as well do it at a historic level. So maybe they're finally going to get a rebound from that. Any other teams you think worth mentioning here, just as the season tips off, that you think can make any? So Dallas, Denver, anyone else catch your eye?
Chicago, for just how great they've been, and the Bulls now, and the Bulls for Sports Series savants with The Last Dance back in the 90s. And I would say that really pertains when it comes to just how much pressure they had a guy like Scottie Pippen has to go to the club and has to leave town for a couple of weeks because of all the pressure. And, some of these other teams that even with the Lakers, a lot of these guys like Dwight Howard, who were a part of that championship team 2 years ago, I think they needed that year off from every game being the Super Bowl, every game being the NBA Finals to, the sort of pressure that takes away from you. And the Warriors face that as well.
How long until this is really the last team I want to mention? I just want to bring up Dallas for a minute. We all know how good. I'm just dropping. Oh wait, where'd it go? How good? Sorry, my screen froze up for a minute. How good Luka is? Course. Everyone knows how good Luka is. There's always been the talks. Is Porzingis the guy to be his number 2? What do you think it's going to take? Because they got the star player, they got a decent supporting cast. If it's not Porzingis, what kind of guy do you think is going to be necessary for Dallas to, go to that upper echelon of Western teams?
Yeah, they're going to have to, figure some sort of miracle, either somebody that they drafted or maybe some trade from a guy that nobody knows about that people are doubting or something, because KP, in my opinion, is not a number 2, and health is probably the biggest thing. But just in general, he's not quite the type of guy that can carry you to the absolute heights of the Western Conference, in my opinion. So he's a really, really solid player, but to me, on a championship team, he's a number 3. He's literally, in my opinion, like a Kevin Love prototype. That's the sort of role that he can have on a championship team. So Dallas, I think, is going to be in the mix, kind of like how Portland, as of a couple of years ago, was always seemingly in the mix, but not necessarily a championship caliber team.
On paper, you would just think it would work so well. Both these guys, international flavor, international style. You'd think it would just work. Like on paper, there's no reason to think it wouldn't. And you said a lot of that could be health. A lot of it could just be, can't be at the level. And if Dallas brings in a second guy, and then KP can be the third guy, like you were saying, maybe that's all it takes. So you got to bring in someone to make him, if he's your third best player, I think you are in pretty good shape at that point.
So, and the other thing is, it's almost a compliment to the Suns, the Warriors, the Lakers, who I think both of us agree are probably 1, 2, 3 in the West, unless you're high on the Clippers, which I would be laughing at as a Laker guy. But when it comes to just how good those 3 teams are, to me, I think Dallas, maybe if they're in a league of 5, 6, 7 years ago, where the West probably wasn't quite as top heavy, maybe it'd be a little bit different. But this is a conference now where you've really got to have 2 bona fide stars to have a chance. Steph Clay, AD LeBron, and then with the Suns, Chris Paul and Ayton, with obviously Devin Booker. It's amazing I put Ayton in front of Booker. That's just how good Ayton has been. So to me, that's a compliment to the top 3 in the West.
It is funny how, super teams are clearly still a thing. That term still gets settled up. We are almost settling back into, so Nick's only a little bit younger than I am, but when I first started watching basketball, it was Batman and Robin. That was the, Penny and Shaq, Kobe and Shaq, the Stockton and Malone, Jordan and Pippen. You talked about it in the Batman and Robin style. I remember when they tried to put Allen Iverson and Carmelo Anthony together in Denver. Oh, that's a Batman and Robin. That'll work. That is the strategy. that was the strategy for so long. And then you got super teams, and it seems you are going back to that, where you need bona fide superstar 1, bona fide superstar that's just a little under number 2, and then get a really solid number 3. And that just does seem to be the way these are starting to look again.
And shout out to Giannis for staying in Milwaukee and Steph for staying in Golden State. After LeBron did what he did and Durant did what he did, I think those 2 guys literally changed the entire complexion of the NBA, where now it feels like there's some drama in the NBA now where there wasn't before.
I don't know that we're ready to have this conversation. I don't know if Nick's
I'm ready whenever you're ready. I'm ready.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but it's a thought I've had for a long time. Even if you like LeBron, take out your fandom of him. What he's done in the league has not been good for the league. I think there's, some mobility is fine, but to jump to a team and play GM and then jump back to a team and then jump there's a reason we haven't seen somebody else do that, right? Because they do it for LeBron because for the longest time, he was the best player in the league. And
Yeah.
when LeBron finally retires, I think it's going to be a while till we have a bona fide, this guy is the best. Like if LeBron was out now, even now, LeBron's older, so it's not no knock on him. But if you polled 20 NBA fans, some are going to say LeBron, some are going to say Giannis, some are going to say Durant, some might even say like Luka, some might say, it's not a clear.
By the way, before you keep going,
yeah.
for those who vote LeBron number one, and I'm a Laker guy, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
He's not number one anymore.
Sure. But I'm saying even if he is like that's fine. But I guess what I'm trying to say is when LeBron, there are people that think like, oh, when LeBron leaves the league, like what's going to happen in the NBA? Like literally nothing's going to happen in the NBA. The NBA might get better when LeBron is gone overall as a league. If that's what you're worried about. If that's what you're worried about, if you're, there's people that think when LeBron retires, the ratings are going to go down, and they're not, because there's going to be more teams to watch. More teams are going to be in the mix. It reminds me of, Peyton Manning's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. The NFL didn't flinch when he retired. When Brady retires, it's the league's not going to suffer from it. It's going to be fine. And I think, we will never see a guy get the freedom of jumping from team to team, basically becoming the GM, saying, I want this guy, trade that guy, do that. Multiple teams, multiple franchises. Like, I don't think we'll ever see that again. And it's a good thing, because I was worried that when LeBron, leaves or gets much older, like, just because we've seen it before, it's like, oh, this is going to be the new guy that is allowed to have all that power. And he might not be the guy worth doing it. And you look at someone like Giannis, who, like, they've made some moves and they got the title. Durant is maybe trying to do it because he goes from Golden State to Brooklyn. I think his career is going to kind of end in Brooklyn, either with a title or without. And, it'll kind of simmer into that. And that might be the last attempt of that. But I think overall, and this might be, Nick always shares the podcast when it's out, and he always finds a quote of mine to either put out of context or in context. So you can use this one if you want. But I think the league will be better when LeBron retires as a whole.
Whoa. You said the NBA is going to be better when LeBron is out?
I think so.
All right.
As a league as a whole. I don't mean the Lakers are going to be better. I'm not saying he's holding the Lakers back or anything like that. But overall, yeah, I think the league will be better. Granted, I don't see LeBron, let's say he plays 5 more years, which might be generous, but let's just say. I don't think he's leaving teams again. I think he's in LA for the duration of his career. So like that whole movement and like just destroying rosters, turning borderline all-star guys into role players and all the stuff he used to do. Like, I think that's kind of over with. I think this is his last hurrah. So like, it won't be as big a deal anymore, but again, I think he'll be in LA for the rest of his career. So at least that part of it is gone, but
right.
Yeah. So, but what stirred that whole thing is seeing guys like Giannis stay. Curry, sure, could he have jumped to another team when the Warriors fell apart? Yeah, but he had no reason not to. Already had the rings, already had the money. They're going to build a statue of the guy shooting a 3-pointer outside of the new stadium, which isn't even in Oakland, right? Where is it now?
San Francisco.
Okay, so yeah,
right downtown. Yep.
Yeah, they'll build a statue of him when he's done, and like the mobility is fine for the people that need it, but if you're the star player, I think it's okay to be where your feet are, as Eric Bieniemy once said, and be like, you want to play with me? You want to win a championship? Come to where I already am. I'm not going to and the world is so global now. You don't have to go to New York, Boston, or LA. If you can win a title in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you can win a title anywhere. It really doesn't matter where you are as long as you have the players, I think.
Well, very well said. Trash players and bums are bad for the league, and apparently LeBron's bad for the league, so he's a bum and a trash player. I'm going to quote that in about a couple hours. So, I think if Luka is just honest with himself, he's going to look at that Maverick situation thinking, we're probably not going to have a great number 2 unless we get lucky for another 3 or 4 years. And it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate. He couldn't get drafted to the Warriors, where he gets a high shelf head coach. Not that the guy in Dallas isn't a very good head coach, but not quite Kerr, not quite, just getting drafted to San Antonio like Kawhi did. Like, oh, it's such a great situation. To a lot of these guys like Zion Williamson, potentially, and, like Luka and some of these other young stars, Ja Morant too, it might take 4 or 5 years, but to me, patience really pays off. in the long run, where your legacy looks a little bit more like that guy right there instead of, a guy like Durant, who it's like, wow, all your titles were when you moved and you played general manager. So to
And if
me,
I'm
I think
specifically Luka, if we're talking about Luka specifically right now,
right.
there's nowhere else I'd want to be than Dallas, because you have my opinion, the greatest owner in the league. If Luka goes to Cuban and is like, hey, what if we get this guy? What do you think? Like, I think he'd really work with my play style. We'd really get some wins. If any owner is going to listen to his star player on a one-on-one basis, it's somebody like Mark Cuban. Like,
Right.
nobody cares about the success of the team he owns in the NBA more than Mark Cuban. I'm convinced.
But even if it wasn't, like we're saying, the process, LeBron was a crazy, tornado and literally torpedoed a lot of NBA teams he was on. And I'm a LeBron guy and a Laker guy. So to me, I think the better move, like we've been saying, is that. So it looks like we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important that we note, LeBron's had a lot of success, but the stuff that he's left in his wake to get there needs to be noted. Like, if you're gonna mention the good, you got to mention the bad. And I think trying to make this is how you have success in the NBA and this is the only way to do it these days was a bad image. And luckily, I think we're kind of past that. I think Milwaukee winning the title has a lot to do with that. Phoenix getting to the finals has a lot to do with that. But just to, no, you got to jump around. You got to jump on every decent roster that you can, sign 2-year contracts instead of 5, just so you always have the ability to move. Like, that just looked bad to me. And luckily, I think we are, even with LeBron in the league, I think he's got his last band of buddies together and he's going to ride it out, because I think he's at the point that if he can't win it with them, like, he's not at the point where he can talk the superstar into coming anymore, but he can get, a lot of really good players, which is, it is a team sport. That's how it was meant to be in the first place. Get guys that can play a role to the best of their ability and win games. That's always been the process. And, what is he, 19, 20 years into the league? He's finally figuring that out. So that's good.
We're progress. I would be shocked if the Lakers win a title with these cast of characters, but if they do, this is it. All right. This 2021 to me is the last year the Lakers are finals favorite, or one of the finals favorites.
All right. So we'll end the basketball talk with this. Is this basically a one and done with the Lakers? You think if they don't get it done this year, it's all just what it's going to be?
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot of 1-year contract guys anyways. So a lot of the players that we brought in, like Malik Monk, I mean, he's got to be gone after this year. Carmelo Anthony, he'd probably stay, but guys like Dwight Howard, who really like to wear their welcome, DeAndre Jordan as well. It's like, I think this Lakers roster is going to look unrecognizable next year too. So this is their last chance.
Well, that'll be my quote for when I posted. Nick says the Lakers have to win now.
That's right.
So that's some good basketball talk, guys. We're going to take a little break. We're going to transition to football, just some of the stuff that happened in the NFL season. More conference realignment in college football has happened. We had a 9 overtime game over the weekend. Wasn't that something?
That is insane.
And the World Series is also set. So we're going to talk about all of that in just a few minutes. So stick around. Okay, guys, we're back. We're going to talk a little bit about college football. There's some conference realignment we're talking about. A couple crazy games, too. Do you want to start with the games, or do you want to start with the realignment?
Let's start with a realignment, because I think a lot of folks need to learn about what's going on in the future of college football.
So a couple weeks ago, we talked about, UCF and Houston and BYU and Cincinnati all going to the Big 12 as, a domino effect of Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. And we kind of thought that was going to be, the big moves, the big realignment for a couple years. But that has, yet another domino has fallen, and the ACC is reacting to losing 3 schools by adding 6. And a lot of these schools are coming from Conference USA: Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, no affiliation to Nick, UAB, and UTSA Roadrunners. When you first see that list, what do you think is if you were the president of the American, what school, what program throughout all sports even would you be most excited to get into your conference?
To me, partially because, I'm pretty familiar with them. UTSA feels like a pretty good one, but, across the board, solid programs. I hope that once we get through the ripple effect of Oklahoma and Texas, and it feels like that was kind of what started everything.
Mhm.
I think once we get through the ripple effect, I think for college football's sake, it would be very beneficial for a sense of stability around this league. If we're going to have a quarter of the teams every 5 years moving to a new conference, I think that's going to be a detriment in the long run. So I believe that this was a ripple effect, and I guess we'll talk in a moment about other conferences and what that means for them. But just in general, I think once we stabilize here, I think it'd be very good for these conferences to stay pat.
I do think Oklahoma and Texas, they put the quarter in the carousel. It's going around.
Yep.
The music's going to stop, and then wherever people are at that moment, like you said, I think this is the year of movement. And then by the end of this season, any movement that's going to happen is going to be known. To answer my own question, UAB, since their program has came back, they just opened an on-campus stadium. It's like a $2 million stadium or something like that. They are very healthy in football. I don't really know how they are in other sports, but if I'm just talking football here, I think UAB is good. They very strategically took 3 Texas schools because there's been talk for a long time that the Mountain West wanted to expand, to the center of the country, mostly in Texas. So they basically snatched up any and all programs in Texas that the Mountain West could have potentially added. I see FAU as what UCF was 10 years ago. UCF used to get referred to as a sleeping giant. And I do think FAU is also that sleeping giant. They're in a great location in Florida. They have Willie Taggart, who, if nothing else, is a great recruiter in the state of Florida, already have an on-campus stadium. Yet again, don't really know how they are in other sports, but if I'm only talking football here, UCF will play them in everything just because of the proximity. We've played them in football in recent years. And when I see their games on TV randomly, I do get flashbacks to the Blake Bortles and earlier era of UCF. Basically, when I was in high school and I started watching UCF, I get the vibes from them that UCF was then. So I think they're a long-term payoff, to get them in now so that when they really expand, that's going to be them. UTSA was kind of that team because they only came into D1. I'll tell you this, when NCAA Football 14 came out, that was UTSA's first season in Division 1. So they barely got into the video game. So that tells you, they're under a decade in Division 1 and have already accomplished a lot, obviously already being a ranked team.
Right.
And, if there's one state other than Florida that it's super hard to get, notice when you're a smaller school, it's a school in Texas. So the fact that they're able to pull that off, I think is very admirable. Rice is what it is. North Texas, kind of the same way. Charlotte is also a fairly new D1 school. Don't know a lot about them, but they are clearly on the rise to get to this point.
Right. FCS school, I think 10, 15 years ago.
Right. So to see them jump these rankings as quickly as they have, the other shuffle around that we've seen is Southern Miss has agreed to join, coming from Conference USA also, to the Sun Belt. And that leaves only about 8 teams in Conference USA. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about what does this mean for the Big 12? Did they merge with the American? It looks like Conference USA might be the one left holding the bag. And if one conference is to dissolve, it might actually be them at this point, because even the Sun Belt has overtook them as a more entertaining league. They call it the Fun Belt sometimes because all the games out there are just really competitive, App State and everything. And I'd like to see Marshall get into the American or the Sun Belt because that's a program that just deserves to be in a more stable conference. But if it might, at the moment, it looks like Conference USA is going to be, when all the music stops, they might be one without a seat at the table, I think.
Right. And, for the conference's stability, 8 teams is just incredible. And how many FCS schools, if we're going to keep Conference USA, how many FCS schools can legitimately make that transition? Maybe 5.
Yeah.
James Madison is a school that could be in that conversation. They are quite a bit out east, so they'd be like a Big 12, for the group of 5 schools. North Dakota State and South Dakota State could be 2 others. Yeah. Just off the top of my head, Southern Utah is a strong program out towards the west, but you're looking at a lot of conferences snaring, especially from Texas and Florida, a lot of the schools up. So,
I did see something about James Madison. I don't know if it was joining a conference or potentially joining one. So while you You can keep your thought, but I got to look
Oh,
up.
I was just going to say,
them.
yeah, to me, I think you're absolutely right. The chances of Conference USA sticking around feels pretty futile. And we said that earlier about, whether the Big 12 would have that. So to me, I think the Big 12 made a huge adjustment, bringing in a bunch of schools that could have otherwise stayed in Conference USA and the American everything, and everything's gotten switched around. And now I think it's Conference USA turn to either, make a huge move, or this will be the beginning of the end.
So I guess if Conference USA does attempt to salvage itself, you could say one of the schools they are looking at is James Madison. So that could be their potential chance to get into.
I didn't read that. I just guessed. All right,
well,
cool.
No, because I knew I saw their name on one of these articles and I didn't know why. And that might be their only chance if they can get some of these budding, like this was 10 years ago, I'd say a school like Youngstown State, who used to be very dominant at the FCS level, kind of middle of the pack these days. But yeah, I think that's going to have to be their route if they were to stay. And there was a point where the Sun Belt was definitely the like bottom tier conference. And, between adding schools like App State, I think has really passed them up in Conference USA. So they, like I said, unless they pull up some of these, because James Madison, for those that don't watch FCS football, like they have one of the greatest atmospheres in FCS. When you mention the Dakotas and things like that, but they won a national championship, I think 3 years ago at this point. It's hard to remember with COVID if it was what year it was or whatever. But no, right. that is a school that in football program that would benefit from being at the D1 level, and they would obviously get more recruits being at the D1 level. Mm-hmm. So that's a good call by you to say that's one that should if they're gonna make this survive, that's the case. And out of the remaining Conference USA schools, Marshall is the one that I think needs to land on their feet somewhere, because that's a program with a lot of great tradition.
I don't bring much of the show, but every now and then I got a little bit of a gem. Just to wrap up this conference realignment point, because I'm sure by our next podcast, there's going to be some breaking news about somebody moving somewhere.
Yeah.
It does feel like these conferences are getting to the point where some of them are getting a little bit too big. I don't, there's no facts behind that. It just feels like once you get past 12, 14, 16 teams in a particular conference, it almost seems like there's some teams that are never going to win it.
I don't 12 is the magic number for me. I know some are going to end up with 14 and I'm going to end up being fine with it. But yeah, talk of 16 just seems like way too much at that point.
Right.
At that point, you're your own league, I feel,
That's right. I don't know how many with the 6 going into the American, how much does that leave the conference with?
They have 8 at the moment. So they need minimum 2, I think, to pull it off. And I think you need 12 schools to have a conference championship game. Otherwise, you just have you can get a what's the word? You can get like a waiver for the NCAA, because when UConn left the ACC, we're actually currently at 11, but we have a waiver that there's still a conference championship game. But otherwise, it just becomes best record at the end of the year gets your title kind of situation.
Interesting.
So 10 is the bare minimum to have a conference, I feel, and then you need 12 if you want the extra money and TV revenue that comes with hosting a championship game somewhere. So,
right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
You'll learn something new every day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's all the conference realignment right now. Like you said, by next week, we might have more, but that's where we're at with this carousel of
conference carousel. I like it. It's really does feel like magical chairs.
I definitely hope all this is settled by the time the video game comes out, because they're going to want all the teams where they're going to be by the time they don't want that game outdated before it even comes out.
Exactly. And it's just kind of amazing, because you hear every year, like on those dark chat rooms and stuff, you see a lot of, man, it'd be really cool if this team moves to this conference and, we have these opponents now and these rivalries and stuff. And it's literally like those nerds' dreams, like everything moving around right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're getting some of it. I mean, you never know what, people talk about it, but never truly expected to happen. And, here it is. So that's the conference realignment part of it. But there was some noteworthy things actually on the field this week. Excuse me. I think the good place to start is we had a 9 overtime football game where Penn State lost to Illinois 20-18.
20-18. How does that score happen?
So this is how it happens. At some point, I forget which I forget which overtime it is. It might be the fourth or the fifth, but they basically just turn it into a 2-point conversion contest, which is, where you're at the 3 or the 5 or whatever, and you just go back and forth trying to score. And this is really the first time that we've seen that take place. And I think when the news came out originally, when they changed the rule, everybody was kind of okay. Like, listen, after like a fourth overtime, let's just get this game finished, right? It's supposed to do it to make the game quicker. And instead we had like a 45-minute, 9 overtime thing. Illinois found a way to win, again, 20-18. But in this situation, nobody really won. It just made both teams look bad, I guess. And it really just was like a black eye on this weekend and the games that they had and everything. I don't know if obviously you could just go back to the original overtime. This was designed to speed up overtime, and it blew up in everybody's face this week. So I don't know. I don't know if the answer is to just go back to the traditional overtime rules for college or what have you, but this clearly did not work. And this is the first time it's really been, there's a chance for it to even be brought up. So now that we see it not work well, we might be going back to the drawing board after this year.
Well, I feel a little bit embarrassed considering how many black eye comments you've made about this. And I'm going to say the NFL should take a page out of the overtime playbook of college football. Not exactly, but to some degree, because I think both right now need adjusting. Like, it's clear that ties are bad for a football game. Yeah. And it's clear also 9 overtimes is bad for a college football game too.
I think the NFL could benefit from, like, both teams get the ball once, you start at midfield, they maybe give you that. And then if no one scores from there, the ties don't happen super often. So I don't think the NFL minds a random tie here or there. So like maybe give them both a drive, and then after that start the 5-minute clock, and then just treat it like a normal game at that point. But something like that. But clearly these are not the answers, and they need to figure out what that might be. Any other games? Really, this was kind of an oh-hum week for college football. Nothing major really happened. A couple of near upsets though. I know you, before we got on air here, you said how you watched Oklahoma, Kansas for a while, because that was surprisingly close for a good while.
Yeah, no, I actually, my folks actually were huge Kansas fans and grew up just outside of Lawrence. So I have to, watch Kansas whenever they're at least decent. So Oklahoma's Caleb Williams is now, it appears, the runaway starter outside of a disaster. He's not going to lose his job again to Spencer Rattler. Caleb Williams showed a lot of resolve in that game, where he is a quarterback that, to me, as great as he was against Texas, outgunning the Texas quarterback. Is Ellinger still there?
No, he's on the Colts, I believe.
Yeah. Whoever was throwing for the Longhorns, I couldn't tell because Williams was outgunning him. But this was as impressive, in my opinion, as that game that they won, the Red River. I think that coming back like they did and avoiding an upset, because when you fall behind like that, double digits, I'm sure as a UCF fan, when you're a favorite in a game and you fall behind early, that is some pressure, man. Yeah, that you almost don't even face until a national championship game. Like, falling behind against an unranked team that's 1-5 is insane pressure. But Williams responded and came back and made huge plays, running and throwing, and won the game.
You mentioned, falling behind in a game you're not supposed to. Another game worth mentioning, Cincinnati, number 2 in the country, beats Navy 27-20. And I think a lot of people don't realize, how was that game so close? How did UCF lose to Navy this year? A lot of that has to do with the backup quarterback. But I don't think people realize how difficult it is to randomly play a triple option team, especially a team that runs the triple option to perfection, like the academies do, and the way like Georgia Tech used to. It's one thing.
Shout out San Diego State beating Air Force.
There you go.
They did
so
the same thing.
It's very difficult. It's one thing if I think in that case, that's a conference game. So you're going to play this option team going into the end. I guess you'll always know you're going to play them. But like, if you're not familiar with it, if you get it, if you know you're going to get it every year, you have a base understanding of, we're playing these guys, that means this. But if you're not used to playing a triple option team, it can be a real kick in the pants. And it definitely took Cincinnati a while to figure it out. Navy had the lead at different points, but they did, even without scoring in the fourth quarter, they got the lead. And, Navy's, any triple option team is just trying to grind out the time and, get in the end zone on the ground. But big play, just a wrinkle thrown in there that Cincinnati was able to overcome. That was definitely an interesting game. Your Tide beat Tennessee, which while that shouldn't be a achievement, what is an achievement is no golf balls or bottles of mustard were thrown on the field. So congrats to Tennessee for accomplishing something this week.
So just to go back really quickly, I am amazed, maybe you know more than I do. How does Navy get all these huge non-conference games, it seems, every year? Because if I were like a top 10 program, I would want nothing to do with that triple option.
I think some of it is a respect thing. I think a lot of teams will, whether it be Army, Navy, or Air Force, will every few years schedule a game with one of them. You know, whether it be like I think Alabama will play Army every handful of years or what have you. I think some of it's respect. One of it is very rarely will that team. This is a conference game for one for Navy and Cincinnati for that example.
Right.
But for other teams, I don't know if they ever go to that place. But you know, being that they're in the American and UCF has gone to Navy a couple times, the atmosphere there is really great. It's just something very unique. You don't usually look up in the stands and see guys in uniform and everything, and just all the different traditions they have. I think it is a cool little, it's just, to me, it's the same way that like teams used to try to schedule Hawaii at Hawaii if they could, because it was just a selling point. Like that's like a mini bowl game trip in the middle of the season. Like you ever wanted to go to Hawaii and play a football game? Like I think it's just one of those, it's just one of those unique things that college football offers. And like, I don't know if that's the exact reason, but I think that's gotta be part of it.
Interesting. Okay, because I was always curious because, you know, it seems like all the times teams will go out of their way to play Citadel and play a lot of these. Citadel always feels like the poster child of like, oh, we're going to play just an absolute pushover. But, you know, just in general, I think a lot of those schools want nothing to do with the team that legitimately could beat them no matter where they play.
That one does seem a little different because that's like an FCS school. Sorry, my light's messing up here a little bit. But, you know, Citadel is an FCS school, so that's a little bit different, I guess.
Well, I'm talking about like these power programs will go out of their way to schedule the easiest non-conference slate. Yeah. And you know, to have Navy constantly, in my opinion, play. I don't know if they played Clemson a year or two ago. I want to
play Notre Dame sometimes.
They play Notre Dame.
But I think that's an old history connected thing, you know?
Right. But it just feels like Navy, you know, should play a lot of schools that are not that great, but it seems like they're always playing somebody good. So
by the way, are your folks Kansas over Kansas State, or is it just either way?
Kansas over Kansas State.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Chalk. I got you. So I didn't know that. I'm surprised we never brought that up. Another pretty, you know,
if you look at the football team, maybe you'd have a bit of a hint.
That's true. But I mean, during basketball season, I guess they have a good time most years.
Yeah, you know, a little bit.
We had the Chip Kelly Bowl this week. We had Oregon beating UCLA. You know, the former lead coach by Chip Kelly. 34-31. Right. That was a pretty fun game too.
I was asleep by that point, so sorry I didn't have that ready.
That just tells you what my sleep schedule is some of these times. The fact that I watched that entire thing.
That's
well, actually, that was an early start. That was like a 5:30 start over here, so that would have been just your normal late game. We mentioned Navy. I just think it's funny. This is an eye-popping score. Ranked Wake Forest beat Army 70-56, and that is a football score, not a basketball score.
Wow, that just goes to show this conference this year. Dabo Swinney must be totally irate about the fact that this was a winnable conference, but Clemson couldn't figure it out, at least so far.
I just don't know what's more surprising, the fact that Wake Forest could put up 70 or that a triple option team could score 56 in a game.
Sheesh. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, you know, Navy, I'm sure you know a little bit about them, but they you know, those triple options are nuts sometimes.
It's next time, you know, if your team has a triple op, you know, an academy, or, you know, I don't know who else does it these days. Georgia Tech used to be synonymous with the triple option, not so much anymore. But if you get one of those academies on your schedule, you can't just cross it off because you never quite know.
Yes.
You know, we saw what happened there with Cincinnati, and then obviously they beat UCF earlier this year. And, you know, a couple years ago in a bowl game, they beat Houston, and Navy hung like 70 on Houston in a bowl game. It was ridiculous. So we'll jump over now to the NFL. When we ended last week's episode, sometimes it's just better to keep your mouth shut. But I had mentioned that Tennessee was just outside the contenders. They weren't in the pretenders category quite yet, but that loss to the Jets I thought was a little hard to shake. and I didn't quite know what to think of them. And since that episode, they've knocked off the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And so some of that, I definitely got to say Tennessee is right back into the contender situation. So that's good for them, but that also translates to, is Kansas City in trouble? Like, what is the issue with the Chiefs right now? I forget who they have next week. I think they have the Giants on like Monday Night Football. So that should be exactly what the doctor orders if you're Kansas City. But in the meantime, what is the main issue with them, you think?
Yeah, to me, it's just there's no other explanation other than it's a Super Bowl hangover. And we've seen this all the time. Super Bowl loss completely crushes a team. Atlanta's that team from a few years ago. Carolina hasn't been able to recover ever since when they lost Super Bowl 50. And I'm drawing a blank on like the Rams, even with Sean McVay, as great as they are, they lose the Super Bowl and they're not the same team the next couple of years. So to me, that's it. Super Bowl hangover. This year, you can write off the Chiefs, book it right now. All right. You can throw the headline wherever you want. You can book the Chiefs are not going back to the Super Bowl. They're just not. They're not. We're a flawed team to begin with going into the year. And to me, I thought Mahomes would play better, but he looks a little bit distracted or pressured right now, or feels like he has to do too much. I think everybody is saying he has to do too much, but to me, it's also he didn't come in ready to go. He's just not. He's too good for this. He's too good to throw interceptions every single game. I just don't think that he took the offseason as seriously as he should have. You can throw your hate mail wherever you want, but I don't believe that he came in ready and prepared. And here's the results of that. And it's a pretty ugly start to the year. And frustrating because I drafted him first round in my fantasy league. So come on, man.
I have him in one league, and then I think I have Tyreek Hill in a different one, who clearly is not getting the ball as much as you would have expected. At Nick the Kid Wright on Twitter too, for all that hate mail for the Kansas City fans out there.
Yes,
bring the smoke. But so
20-0,
not back to the Super. Chiefs not going back to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a huge, bold statement currently right now. But you see them righting the ship to some extent, making the playoffs. Even if it's the wild card, right? I mean. What about the division? You just think it's wild card all the way, or do they still got a chance in the division?
Oh, wild card. All right. Yep. Yeah. Are you really going to tell me? All right. A Charger fan? Are they going to? I still honestly, I think there's a 10% chance they do win the division. When you have an Andy Reid, I think you always have a chance. But and maybe in half the divisions they don't win it, or I mean they do win it. But I got the Chargers winning it for sure. I don't think the Raiders have a chance. Broncos have no chance.
And the Raiders, John Gruden or not, like they're still chilling at 5-2.
Yeah.
Can I finally say I told you so on Jalen Hurts, or do I got to wait a few more weeks?
Oh man. Well, can you say I told you so? But what's it called? You were right about Nick Sirianni. Could you give me a bone there?
Oh yeah, you definitely. I mean, I never thought when we got him, I wasn't pumping my fist like, oh, this is the guy. But, all the weeks of, just run the damn ball, they finally start giving Miles Sanders a decent amount of carries. And, of course, he gets injured and carted off the field. I don't know if there's an injury update on that, but it clearly didn't look good. So that's not – Josh Jacobs, too, for the Raiders, same game, gets injured, knocked out of that game. So not a good game for running backs this week.
I'll check up your Miles Sanders update. I don't want folks having to look it up themselves. Okay?
That's true. And I'm also going to look at Jalen Hurts' stats for the year to see if I have – enough room to say I told you so yet. But that was a frustrating game, obviously, against the Raiders yesterday. Or
2 to 3 weeks, sprained ankle.
Okay, so he's out for a little while, but not not the end of the year. But we were starting to get something going there. That was a game while we still had Miles Sanders. We saw Boston Scott for the first time this year, who's a solid change of pace back. I would like to see more of him too. So looking at Jalen Hurts' stats for the year, 10 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 38.9 QBR, which is good for 26th in the league. And I'm going to get
that's not one game. That's the season?
That is the season.
Ooh.
Yeah. So and obviously some of that is going to be, because he is a running quarterback. So we'll look at the rushing stats here. He does have 5 touchdowns on the ground, but he did fumble 3 times too. So to combine that, you're looking at 15 total touchdowns and 7 total turnovers. So you're just a tad bit above breaking even there. And that's not the, I think it's simple enough to just say you can't be near the touchdown. You can't be even on the touchdown turnover mark if you're a starting quarterback for a team that's expecting to do anything.
With a Miles Sanders, given not as many carries as he should have, but
yes.
Yeah, that to me, the Eagles being as bad as they are is a little shocking. I thought they'd be slightly better. But what is surprising is that division, whether the Eagles would be their best or not, is already almost over. It's amazing to me how great Dallas has been this season.
Yeah. So one of Ricky goes by Space Cowboy on YouTube and Twitter. One of Hank's buddies. He posed the question. He posted the question the other day, like, will the Cowboys wrap up the NFC East by Thanksgiving or like on the Thanksgiving game? And I'm like, honestly, and I answered him, I'm like, honestly, if they don't, like something bad has happened to you guys because nobody, like they're 5-1. So if they win next week and they go 6-1, I don't know any other team in the NFC East is winning 6 games all season. So I think they're gonna have it wrapped up pretty close to Thanksgiving. And like, while I don't enjoy saying that, it's just like, Washington's a mess. Taylor Heineke is only so good, and really, I think he's someone valuable. I think he'd be a really good backup on any team in the league. The Eagles are what they are, and the Giants are, they're like us, but with more injuries. Like it's really the same thing. And the only wins I think any of these teams are getting are going to be against each other. So you can only get so many more wins. And I mean, I think if Dallas has 9 wins, they win this division running away, and I think they're gonna win, considerably more than 9. So to answer Ricky's question, I did tweet him, but shout out to him. Check him out if you are a Cowboys fan. Space Cowboy, I think 17 on YouTube. Again, if you like your Cowboy stuff, definitely go check him out. But I don't think it's what's up.
Oh, I was just going to say, the Cowboys are pretty good because the fans are actually not as annoying this year than they are last year. When they're going 8-8 every year, it feels to me like the fans are screaming that we're good, we're this close and all that stuff. But now the Cowboys fans, they know they're good. And while they're always going to be annoying, and I'm sure you can attest to that, but at least this year, you're not hearing as much outlandish conversation like, Dak's number 1 and everything. It's just, hey, we're a good team this year and we're balanced and all that.
Maybe they just don't want to jinx it. So they're like, let's keep it good. But the little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for the Eagles, we have the Dolphins first round pick next year. That would be good for number 3 if the season ended. We would be, what would this 3?
What a pickup. Yeah.
We'd be like 9th picking with our pick. And then as Carson Wentz, he got the win in the rain on Sunday night. If he continues to play all their games, we're going to have the Colts first round pick also. So we're going to have 3 first round picks. And let's just say the season ended today. We'd have picks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and like 15. So I mean, there is some light at the end of the tunnel if you're an Eagles fan. Now, whether you put all that together and try and trade for like a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers or something, or do you just make those 3 picks and rebuild off of 3 players? I will say though, this is going to be a notoriously bad quarterback draft. So I don't know that you're going to get your quarterback of the future this year. Like I think the guy from Ole Miss is like the best one coming out this year, which is oh-hum at best. So I don't know if it's better to one more year of jail, or maybe let's give Minshew. I called at the beginning of the year, Gardner Minshew is going to start between 1 and 3 games this year, and I think it's going to come eventually. He hasn't even been active. We traded for a guy that's basically sat. He hasn't dressed for a game this year. It's just been Flacco and Hurts for whatever reason.
That is weird.
But there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't know if it's better again to just package those 3 picks into a proven quarterback, or to draft a lineman, another good, I don't know, whatever the main needs are, obviously, but it should be a good way to a shot in the arm for this team going into next year. And I'm not 100% already looking at next year. There's other guys that I am enjoying watching. I do think the receiving core, even with Devontae Smith, who has shown that he is a first round pick talent, I think anybody under him is just not worth. Greg Ward is a very good 3-4 receiver, but Rager, I'm just not feeling it, man. And then we traded Zach Ertz away, but Dallas Goedert, I think he can fit that role rather nicely. So I'm not as worried about that. And Zach Ertz, deserves to finish his career with a winner. And he did catch a touchdown in his first game as a Cardinal, so that did put a smile on my face to prove it was actually the longest touchdown of his career. It was like a 41-yarder. In his first game with the Cardinals. Yeah, he caught it like in the middle of the field, just nothing but open space. And just got in the end zone there.
Very,
I
very
did want to
cool.
bring this up too. I don't know if you caught and I wouldn't have blamed you if you didn't. The Bucks and the Bears game, not the most entertaining of sorts. I think it was like 38-3 or something, but
38-3.
Brady threw a touchdown to Mike Evans, which was his 600th touchdown pass. And Mike Evans gave the ball to a fan, and then they realized the significance of the ball, so they wanted to get the ball back. The fan actually did give the ball back, and I'm going to see if I can screen share. I haven't done this in a while. A massive update on this computer before we did this today, and I think some of the settings are a little messed up. So I was just going to put a graphic together. But basically, the fan gave the ball back, and he was promised a different game ball, $1,000 gift card to the team store, a promise of a helmet and a couple jerseys, and, quote, something nice in return from Tom Brady. And this ball in the sports memorabilia space has been priced at between $500,000 and $1 million is what this.
Wow.
So my question to you is, how would you have reacted? What would have been your demands to get this ball back in the presence of Mr. Tom Brady?
Definitely not that. Okay. I could literally take the next touchdown pass he threw and act like it's the 600th, and who cares?
Well, they did say he gets a different game ball, so there's that in there at least. So
right. Well, I'm talking about from the standpoint of Brady and all them. Like, am I really going to give all of that just to get but listen,
I don't think Brady cares about giving him any of that stuff. $1,000 gift card to the store and a jersey that he's got $1 million of and sign it. Like, I don't think any of that. I don't think Brady's going to miss any of that stuff,
Right. I guess that's a good point. But, just all disclosure, I'm not as huge of a card collector and like a memorabilia collector like some of these other guys are. So, I'm not scrounging for a 1972 jersey of Franco Harris or something like that. So but in general, I think that is such an amazing thing for that fan. Like, oh man, I'm about to be a millionaire.
Well, as you guys can see from my background, and if I could turn this camera this way and show you my closet with all the game worn jerseys and stuff that I own, I am very much in the memorabilia space.
Fair enough.
If that ball is truly worth that much money, the only person that's going to pay for that much, it's got to be like authorized and all that stuff. I would take if it was truly worth like $500,000 and I wasn't going to be able to truly cash in that amount, because obviously you could do that, I guess, if the guy kept it. I would have asked for all the stuff that they offered here, and I'm going to read it again. You get a different game ball, $1,000 gift card at the team shop, which you'll basically be able to get as many jerseys and everything else that you've ever wanted, a helmet and a jersey from Brady himself. But if this thing is truly worth like $500,000 to $1 million, so let's cut in the middle, because they said between $500,000 and $1 million. Let's just say it's worth $750,000. Let's just say, and I'm truly going to give that up. And I don't know if you saw a picture of this guy, and I'll try and like add this in after the fact then for when people watch this. But this guy is like all in Bucks gear, clearly a big Bucks fan. The seat he's sitting in isn't cheap. He's right there on the end. Right. I'm going to say, I want all the stuff you're giving me, and I want season tickets for life.
Hey,
if
there
it's
it is.
Truly worth $500,000, and you're asking me to pass up $500,000, at least give me my seat here forever. Like, if I'm truly going to give this bajillionaire Tom Brady back this thing that, $500,000 is a life-changing amount of money to that guy, not to Brady. It's the item itself. So no, that's what I would say. I'm like, yeah, all that stuff's great. And season tickets for life. That's how I would handle that situation.
For sure. Yeah. Have fun once Bruce Arians is gone and Tom Brady is gone a couple of years. But anyways,
but again, if you care enough to even now to get those tickets that close now, like, you must be a good Bucks fan, I would imagine.
For sure.
That would definitely be that's how I would handle the situation.
To me, no deal. I'm taking $750,000. Yeah. All right. I could buy 5 season tickets to the Bucks, right? I could be sitting on the bench right alongside, Tristan Wirfs if I have that much money.
Oh, and when I say season tickets, I mean, I'm getting at least 2 to 3 seats. That way I can always bring people with me. Right. So there's that.
For sure.
And again, the money's never going to add up to it being worth that much. But like, I don't know, man, like, somebody's first touchdown ball to me is more relevant than their 600th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sure. It's like, I understand it's a milestone, but like,
whatever Brady's last one is should
that I understand. And like when Drew Brees broke the passing record, and I think Brady ended up breaking it after that. Like, that ball even, like, I get it, but like, I'm not paying that. Like, even if I had the money, like, I'm a decent, for the amount of money that I bring in, I'm a decent memorabilia collector. And I don't know, it's like footballs like that. Like, I have a couple game used footballs from like UCF and stuff, but I'm not big on like the ball. I'd much rather have jerseys and helmets and banners, and as you can see behind me and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, because you can only store footballs so many. I have this tub with all the game used ones that I have and practice used ones. Yeah, football's just a little different because like you never truly know that you're getting that one because they all look the same, especially when they're like an official game ball. So like, I don't know, I'm a little testy on that. But again, if you really want it back, that'd be my thing. I'm like, give me all that stuff and 2 or 3, like my little row of season tickets for life. That would be my thing.
Yeah, it'd be pretty slick if that guy just gave like a different ball, not the one that actually was game war. But this story kind of, in my opinion, makes it crystal clear that Tom Brady's a big memorabilia guy. Remember when he lost the Super Bowl jersey, I think 2018, and it was a huge deal. Like, we got to get that jersey back. And then the same situation here with the game ball. So,
but I do
two
understand.
things. One,
I
he's
do
a memorabilia guy.
I understand the jersey more than the ball, though. But go ahead.
Right. I was just gonna say, one, he's big on memorabilia, and two, he also gets a little loosey goosey with his favorite memorabilia. It seems like he's constantly leaving it up for people to take.
Well, this was Mike Evans' fault because he caught the touchdown, and like most people do, they just flip it to a fan after. So this was actually Mike Evans' fault.
Right,
if you can even call it that.
Well, they threw so much in the red zone. I'm sure they were thinking like, we're going to break the plane for this one of these times.
Yeah, exactly. Evans, so. If you remember back to the Dream Bowl 6, I dropped the little nugget of information that Emmitt Smith has like every touchdown ball he's ever scored and like almost every jersey. Like, you want to talk about a memorabilia guy? This dude just has like a storage unit with all these bins of like basically everything he ever had from his career, which is crazy. I recommend looking into that if that's stuff that people care about, especially like from those old Cowboy days.
That is crazy. And the other thing that's crazy is that every ball that's in there is properly inflated.
Yeah, which is not necessarily the case for some of the ones Brady might have. I don't know.
That's right.
From the gridiron to the diamond, we're going to wrap up today. This has been good. We've covered a lot of different sports. I don't know that we've had this attempt before of all these different things. But we're going to go from the gridiron to the diamond as the World Series is set. The Houston Astros and the Atlanta Braves face off. I think Tuesday is game 1. So by the time y'all hear this, it'll be tomorrow. So I actually bring this up, one, because it's the World Series and it's always exciting. But like, as a Phillies fan, and you guys can see the banner behind me, I tweeted out the other day that, the Braves need to win this for the sake of baseball, because everyone knows what's going on with Houston and the Astros. And like, do I think they're still cheating? Probably not, because they did in fact get caught. So if they're cheating, they're at least doing it in a different way these days.
Yeah.
But if they win this thing, then they can always say, see, the cheating didn't matter, and we can just forget about it all. And that's not I love that the Houston Astros are actually being held accountable for their actions, in the sense that I don't know how the Patriots didn't get the same type of treatment back in the early 2000s with Spygate. This is what I expected to happen, to where like, did they take the ring away? No, but like, you should still like, it should be talked about in almost every conversation involving the Patriots the way it is right now with the Astros.
But I do believe that it should have been harsher on both. And I also believe that when it comes to the Astros, I think that their situation is a little different, because nobody in the MLB is banging trash cans, but in the NFL, everybody's recording something. Right. Patriots took it too far, but I think in both instances, both got slaps on the wrist compared to what really should have happened. One, and then two, as I quickly make a comment that scrambled for my light here that I lost. When it comes to Houston, the fact that they were able to rebound so fast is a testament to how the MLB, they're not okay with the behavior, but they certainly didn't make it a point where this behavior is going to torpedo your franchise, which to me was a horrible move. They needed to let the league know that this sort of behavior is not allowed. And I think every fan realizes that the MLB should be partially at fault here for literally allowing, this franchise to rebound so quickly.
Well, I do think you could almost put like the Patriots thing was almost treated the way in baseball when people get busted for like stealing signs, because that happens seemingly every year.
Right.
And they dealt with whatever the issue was, and then they just kind of went on with it. But I still look at it. I don't, I might be a Phillies fan and all that, but I'm still very much behind the Braves for this World Series. People don't always remember this, but like living in Florida, the Rays and the Marlins are both relatively young baseball teams. And when I was younger, if you lived in Florida, you were probably a Braves fan, because there was a time where there was no professional baseball in Florida. And like my brother-in-law, for example, and his entire family. So the Braves roots actually run really deep in Florida, for those that don't live here and don't know that. So I do think there's going to be a lot of people cheering on the Braves for this year. And like, whether you like it or not, Houston is still a very good team. So I do think it'll be a competitive series. But I just wanted to throw that in there because, and I'm going to put the tweet up that I put out. I had like 13 people disagree with me about being a Phillies fan and still like rooting for the Braves. But I did have 659 people like it and agree with me. So the ratio there, I don't want to live in a world where the Astros get to be like, see, all the cheating didn't matter and we can just deal with it. So that's
My
what I
guy
don't
Phil
want.
Nunziata blowing up on Twitter. I saw that too. I was like, what in the world?
Every once in a while, I get a good one out there that requires a lot of what do they call
attention or something.
yeah, well, attention, I guess, but they use a word in social media, engagement. A lot of engagement gets thrown out there. Yeah, so
whatever.
this has been fun, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I think Atlanta and Houston have two of the better home field advantages, not field, but home advantages. So, you could say that about the Dodgers, the Red Sox, a couple other teams where just the fans are totally invested. So this should be a fascinating series to see who wins on the road first.
Definitely. And game one is tomorrow night by the time you guys hear this. So enjoy the World Series, guys. Enjoy some NBA hoops, and I'm sure is also on today. It's good to have that back. And we're getting close to mid-season of the NFL already, so things are going at full sprint. And I want to thank you guys for clicking on and checking it out. We covered a lot of stuff today. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.